So just again to give my background, started out at Cornell Engineering, then Accenture, PepsiCo back east, and then I moved out to San Diego to join Sony Electronics, which is headquartered in the US out of San Diego. Then I jumped to a startup called Lytix or DriveCam. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then more recently, working with Jack in the Box, while also helping out on some boards and some startups. So I thought I'd tell a couple stories around how I stumbled into figuring out innovation. Maybe this is a good time to do that because we've had this great day with all these fantastic speakers about these really big ideas, and at some point in the day it feels a little overwhelming because we have to go back to our offices and our jobs tomorrow and say, you know, what am I going to put into practice? So maybe I'd be really happy if anybody took away a couple ideas, again learning from my mistakes about what stuff you could put into practice in your jobs tomorrow and going forward that kind of get some momentum around eating this elephant of innovation, you know, one bite at a time. So I'll start back 9 years ago when I first became a CIO at Sony Electronics. Everybody has their first CIO job, so it was definitely learning on the job for me. And one of the things that was rattling around in my head was that we had 4 different partners lined up. And you know, we had one for SAP, one for Oracle, one for our legacy mainframe, and another for our web properties. And I just couldn't get my arms around what was going on with each of these partners. Each one had a different contract term and service level agreement and scorecard and, you know, way they measured success. And in some cases we were just out tasking. In other cases it was more project based. So I was really struggling with that. And I was talking to Vinny Charu, who was my colleague at the time, my cousin Vinny, as I call him. And he's now an Avasant fellow. And we were kicking around that idea saying, it seems like we should do something bigger. It seems very tactical, what we're doing with these partners. So I turned the corner one day, walked into my office, and there was a gentleman there in a suit that I was not expecting. That's a dead giveaway that there is a vendor in your office. So I had 2 thoughts immediately because I didn't remember it being on my schedule. My first thought was I really have to talk to my new admin, Judy, and kind of work out that as a new CIO, you just can't have people showing up in my office. That was my first thought. And then my second thought was how could I get this guy out of my office as quickly as possible while still being polite, which I was going to struggle with. So I sat down. Long story short, it turned out it was Kevin Parikh. And I said, so nice to meet you. What do you do and why are you here? And he started explaining his service. And I go, this has never happened in my career up to this point, and it has never happened since. But this unsolicited offer turned out to be, I said, that's actually exactly what I need right now. And again, like I said, it's never happened before. And long story short, we ended up doing this RFP. And I won't give you the whole story because it involves me going to Tokyo and having a lot of sake and late night meetings to get signature level at that point from the global CFO. And they came back and said, did you get approval? I said, I'm not really sure. It's hard to tell. But we got approval. We did this very big deal. They kind of consolidated all that, got us out of the tactical day-to-day out-tasking and into a real partnership. So my first learning around innovation as a CIO was can't do it all yourself, right? You need good partners, and in some cases you need a partner who can help you figure out how to partner. And that does a lot of things. It broadens your capability. It lets your team focus on what's core. I'll come back to that too. The second thing is, so then slightly after that, I go to my first executive monthly update. You know, you get your 15 minutes of fame with the executive team, tell them what's going on in IT. So I think about it, I say, well, I'll really tell them where we're spending our time because we have a lot of people, I think maybe 300 people at the time. A lot of them were working on our SAP upgrade for July 4th weekend and the regression testing we were doing. I got about 2 minutes into that spiel, lost everybody. Everybody on the executive team just right down on their phones, you know, or Japanese listening, they call it, eyes closed and really not paying any attention. So I said, wow, totally missed that. After I presented, someone said, hey, Drew, I wanted to ask you about this social networking. My kids are on Facebook. And I think, can we do anything like that for the sales team? You know, that would be pretty cool. So come back to the next meeting. I say, hey, you know, the SAP regression testing is going okay, but let's talk about social networking and what that could do for our business, for our employees connecting and engaging, for our sales force, talking about with our customers, how can we collaborate with our customers using social, Salesforce, those type of things, Slack. And ran over time, lost control of the meeting. Everybody was diving in, super interested. So my second learning was that the only thing management really wants to talk about is innovation, right? Sure, they have to talk about compliance. Sure, you have to tell them if there's a support issue. Sure, they want updates on the projects, but they really, if you can talk to them about something that might increase the top line, increase the bottom line by lowering costs, improve customer satisfaction, brand equity through something innovative in technology, and collaborate. You don't have to have all the answers, but just engage in that conversation. They love that. Next thing I learned, I said, okay, I'm getting this feedback, this vibe that people want innovation, and then management wants me to do innovation. So I'm going to put this line item in our budget saying I'm going to add 5% to a lot of the areas. It's going to call it innovation. So proudly I go to my budget. I say, here's everything we're doing, run the business, grow the business, and 5% I'm going to innovate for you guys. They said, that's great, but it's just not a good year for that kind of thing. So another rookie mistake, everybody read the Dilbert book a while back? It's a great chapter at the end. It's called Find the Umbrella. Right, so this guy goes on a business trip. It's raining. He buys an umbrella, puts it on his expense report. It comes back and it says, we don't pay for umbrellas on business trips. Sorry. So the guy doesn't know what to do. Next expense report, fills it in, and at the bottom he just writes, find the umbrella. So I always say that as far as the innovation budget. It's got to be in there. Don't put it in there to be discretionary. You have to have it in there. Sometimes I talk to my teams, only California people will get this, but when they show me a project, I say, what do you got in there for Melrose? Anyone know Melrose? So that's in California. That's just an infrastructure tax that you want to put on everything you do to make sure that if you're going in to add this functionality and you need to upgrade servers or you need to patch or there's some other infrastructure, you need to add horsepower to the box, whatever it might be, make sure you're constantly doing that because you don't want to say, we love to innovate, but we need to take a year off to upgrade our servers or this service or do these patching. No one ever wants to have that conversation. So again, another thing I learned was bake that innovation into all the budgets. And then the last thing I would say, just as far as it relates to my experience at Sony, was also you have to understand politics around it. So when I talked about that social thing and how that got away from me, right away there was a big challenge. So PR said, well, if it's social media, that's us. We're going to take the lead on social networking and social innovation. And then sales said, well, no, we brought up the idea in the first place. We're going to do that. And then legal stepped in and said, hey, there's a lot of PII and privacy questions. So everybody started jumping into that. So you have to take a step back. Sometimes the technology is the easy part, and then you have to understand the human dynamic. Like, what are the wins for everybody? And in my case, come from the Ronald Reagan School, say we could get a lot more done if we don't worry about who's going to take credit for it. So how can you get these ideas out there, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it was your idea or someone else's idea. If everyone can collaborate and you can facilitate that in the organization, a lot can get done. So went on to make a few more mistakes, but have a nice 5-year run as CIO at Sony, where Kevin also had a great run. And based on the great work we did in the US, went on to UK. And I knew I was in trouble one day when I called Tokyo, and they said, I said, where are we meeting? They said, we'll meet in the Avasant conference room. This is in Tokyo. I said, the what? He said, the Avasant conference. I said, okay, Kevin's got a pretty good gig there in Tokyo. But great work. We kind of fell out of touch a little bit because then I moved on to a startup called Lytix or DriveCam. A little bit ironic. It's a startup that was based on video-based driver safety. So a camera that was in the windshield of, if you go into see any waste management, Cisco, US Food, Las Vegas cabs. Not everything stays in Vegas. The videos in the cabs actually come back to Lytix or DriveCam. So basically, if there was a braking incident or a swerve or a crash, it would back up like a DVR, 10 seconds, take the next 20 seconds, send it to India and the Philippines. They'd mark it for 20 different behaviors, give you like a FICO score for the driver, say what happened. So able to, cut accidents in half, almost eliminate fatalities for most of the fleets we're in, save a lot of lives, and save a lot of money for our customers. But what was interesting for me in that, I was the CIO, but I was also the CTO. And as part of the CTO, I also own product. And that was really eye-opening for me. So for years and years, as the IT guy, someone said, hey, we want to do something. Okay, give us your requirements, right? And you tell us the requirements, we'd love to do it, we'd be happy to do it. And as a product owner, you don't really have users, right? You're trying to, a great example, and this is the Henry Ford expression. And he said, if I asked my existing customers, or asked customers what they wanted, you know what they would have said? Do people know that quote? He said everybody would have asked for faster horses. Right, so that's the challenge as a product owner. You have to see what's out in the market and what is that unvoiced need, what is that thing that somebody wants that no one has thought of yet. And that's very different from IT, where a lot of times we say, hey, just give us the requirements and we'll try to meet those requirements. So I think every IT person should think as a product owner. We heard earlier about think about the user experience. Put yourself in the user. Think end-to-end. Think around what would delight that user. So I think in that case, I learned a lot about that. The other thing I learned a lot about in the private equity startup space, and we started out at about 50,000 vehicles under subscription. We were up to 400,000 when we sold, so just tremendous growth. What's fascinating to me, having 7 private equity partners, including Volvo, and Welsh Carson in New York was one of the lead ones, but they're all private equity. So you go into a boardroom once a month with all these private equity folks from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, even Cornell, and they're all looking at your business, and they all are very polite and intelligent. And you say, here's what we're doing with the product, here's what we're doing with our marketing, and they're like, oh, that's wonderful, that's very nice, very interesting. Oh, I didn't know we could do that, fantastic. And they're kind of leaning back in their chairs. And then you say, okay, here's our projections on revenue and cost. And they lean forward, and then they just tear it apart. Third quarter COGS, you're up 2%. Last time you said it was going to be 1%, and you said revenue was going to, it didn't do that. What happened? So it reminded me of an article I read in the New York Times about a guy in Vegas who his business is to pick college football games. Right? In his model, he's a multimillionaire. All he does, he picks 4 games a week, and he says, Nebraska, Ohio State, 6.5-point spread, should be 3.5. He picks 4 games. People subscribe to that. He's right more than 60% of the time, and he makes millions doing that. But what's fascinating to me about that is he never looks at a game. He never watches a game. It's all data to him. And so the private equity guys reminded me of that. They don't want to be distracted by a demo. They don't want to be distracted by a great pitch or PowerPoint. They're just saying, oh, that's nice. Oh, I appreciate that. The numbers. So while you're looking at innovation and thinking product, thinking user experience, think of the market that you're going after, you also have to think about, is there really a business case behind that? If it was your money, when you say, oh, this is a great, I had someone in my BI team the other day say, we need more money to do this, Drew. I said, if it was your money, would you spend it on what you're suggesting? Let me get back to you on that, right? So really want to think that way, and that's something I learned, again, out of private equity. So take all that dial forward, and then I become the CIO of Jack in the Box, and I think I like the stuff that we saw before around Maslow's hierarchy. We have got to keep the trains running. I call that run the business. You got to be able to grow the business, invest IT dollars to grow the business. Then you got to disrupt the industry too. You got to innovate to disrupt the industry. So I start that, and just to break it up a little bit, I thought I'd share a little story. And I get in there, and I'm talking about security and compliance. I think a good analogy that I said to people: why do you have brakes on a car? Right? That seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? Like racing around. Why do you have brakes? Oh, a lot of people would say, so you can stop. No. The answer is so you can go fast. Right? When you think about compliance, talk to a board, say if you have good compliance, you can do things without constantly hitting the wall, taking a step back. PII asks you a question, PCI slows you. If you got compliance going, you can go fast. So that's why we have to do compliance. But with that, I talked up a lot about security. If we're ready to do the video, I'll share this, just a little shameless Jack in the Box promotion. And I'll share a little story about it too, just for fun. Has anyone seen this commercial? It was in the Super Bowl. This came out in November. Everybody knows Jack.
It's my best buttery Jack yet. The triple bacon buttery Jack with hickory smoked bacon, bacon mayo, and my super secret ingredient, bacon butter.
It's amazing. Let's email the team.
Email?
Don't worry, we're not going to get hacked.
We've been hacked.
What?
They got everything.
Everything?
Everything.
Oh, who could have done this?
Professionals.
Whoa. Bacon butter.
What?
Oh, I haven't had lunch. Ow!
The word is out. Get my new triple bacon buttery Jack before it's gone.
So two things about this. First, I object to the representation of the IT guy. I didn't appreciate that. But the second thing was marketing. I've just gotten there a few weeks, and marketing, I was talking about a lot of things around PCI and just improving our security posture, having done a lot of that on-the-job training with Sony. And then so a week later I got a call, can you help us out on something? I said, sure. They said, we need your advice on the Super Bowl commercial. I said, I'm the IT guy, right? I said, yeah, we know that. So this commercial, but the original, just in this room, if we could keep it in here, the original ending was Putin, and he couldn't get in. And his Russian guys could not get into our systems. I said, no. That's not okay. So I felt like in the first few weeks I was able to add value in that regard, but also had fun collaborating with marketing on that. And then the other thing I'd say about Jack in the Box, so certainly we're doing compliance and run the business, and we want to get to grow the business and other things. But Jack in the Box started in 1951, so we've been at this for over 60 years. We also have the Qdoba brand, not so big in San Diego, but more so in Denver area in the Midwest and back east. But we were the first company to do the two-way intercom in the drive-thru back, I think, in the 60s. So there is this kind of history of being innovative, being quirky, differentiating that way. And so we think there's a tremendous opportunity to innovate in fast food, and especially around, I call it digital guest experience and how you order. I think a lot of our customers might want to order food like around 4:20 and have it delivered. Anybody get that? Anybody? All right. Have it delivered to their house, and with minimal effort, call up Alexa or through their PlayStation 4, say, I love a burger now. Certainly, I think one thing that's really interesting to us in our industry is Domino's, and everybody's used to home delivery of pizza, right? But one thing Domino's said that's really interesting is they've always said, hey, we're a technology company that just happens to deliver pizza. And I've always thought every company should think of themselves as a technology company that just happens to do something else. I think that's kind of a key to surviving in this digital age. So I think there's a lot of stuff we want to do: license plate recognition, facial, phone ahead, loyalty apps, working with all the DoorDashes, Postmates, Uber Eats, Olo, and figure out how do we make it really easy for our customers to order our product ahead of time, have a good experience in the restaurant with Wi-Fi and personalized music. There's a lot that we could do. I have to get the day-to-day running properly. I have to get the investments prioritized properly, and we're doing a lot of agile. I've actually got management excited about agile prioritization of all investments. And then we want to be able to innovate. And the first thing is to start having those conversations with marketing, with product management, and really don't have all the answers. No one knows where this is going. There's two Wayne Gretzky quotes I will leave you with as it relates to this. One is, everyone knows Wayne Gretzky, greatest hockey player ever. And he wasn't particularly big or fast. So one day a reporter asked him and said, you're not that big, you're not that fast, but you're always by the puck. What's going on with that? And he said, I think the problem is a lot of other people are always skate after the puck, but I skate to where the puck's going to go. So that's a big challenge for us in innovation, using partners to figure out, we're not as big as the Golden Arches folks or some other folks out there, but if we can figure out where that puck is going and architect an agile infrastructure and team to do that and get the right partners, we think we can really be nimble and aggressive in that. The second quote is, and as a former basketball player, I believe this, is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So there's a lot of, I think when you talk about the Maslow's hierarchy, there's a tendency to say someday, once we run the business running perfectly, we're going to get to the point where we really can partner and drive, projects. And once we get that nailed perfectly, then we'll work our way into maybe even having a seat at the table on innovation. And there's a guy, Randy Mott, is a kind of all-star Hall of Fame CIO. And early in my CIO time, he said, I was getting a lot of friendly advice from folks saying, you got to pick what kind of shop you're going to be. Are you going to be the efficient, low-cost provider? Are you going to be the partner, the value-added partner? Are you going to be the crazy innovator? And I was kind of wrestling with this existential, what I want to be when I grow up. And then he said, choosing is losing. If you think you can do one of those 2 or 3 things, you're just not going to be successful. You have to hit all three. And so I always believe that. And then to wrap it up, and back to working with Avasant and Kevin, the first thing is need an awesome team. You have to have a team that knows what they are as from a core perspective. What do we do well? And what's the stuff we're not going to do well? And we're going to need to rely on great partners with great agreements and great arrangements and shared success models to deliver on that. So, it's all predicated on having, as much as we talk about technology, it's all predicated on having great people on your team with a clear vision and around our core and a great set of partners to extend your capabilities.